Here's my interview with Greg Palast. Greg, thank you so much for joining me in these ridiculous times.
Yeah, I'm laughing out of the pain.
Yeah, laugh instead of crying. Let's start with the breaking news. A lawsuit in Indiana has proven successful in stopping interstate cross-check. You and I have talked about that on the show before. It's a racist system designed to purge mostly people of color from the voter rolls based solely on their names. Millions were purged in the last election. You revealed this system, even though it still gets very little coverage. Can you talk about this win in Indiana?
Oh, yeah, it's big stuff. Chris Kobach of Kansas, and if you can't remember that name, think KKK. That's Trump's vote thief in chief. He created a system called interstate crosscheck to capture all those millions, what he said is 7.2 million people voting twice and registered in 2 states. And they successfully removed some of these ne'er-do-wells. Weirdly, several thousand, and I'm not kidding, were named Jose Garcia. They said Jose Garcia voted in 29 states. I'm not making this up. I mean, most of these Jose Garcias in the 29 states, tricky that they are, they use different middle names. So is Jose Eduardo Garcia, with Jose, with another Jose Garcia, I can't make that up. 568 guys named James Brown were removed from the voter rolls of Georgia and in other states because they found, believe it or not, James Brown in not only in Atlanta, but a James Brown in Motown. They found a James Brown in Baltimore.
Well, Greg,
obviously, this guy
that's clearly one guy voting 568 times. I think that's obvious.
So they removed 1.1 million voters before the 2016 election. Over 1 in 7 African Americans in the states, the GOP states, and using this cross-check system. I broke the story in Rolling Stone. The ACLU picked it up, sued in several states, including Indiana, and we've pretty much shut the program down for 2020. But it's like whack-a-mole. We get rid of this one racist, horrible system where you get rid of James Browns and Jose Garcias. But they've got new systems now that, so in other words, I can't retire yet.
That was going to be my next question. Is crosscheck dead, or are there still a few states using it?
Well, we actually got, because my film was played in Kansas 60 times before the last election. So Chris Kobach lost office. Even his Republican successor decided to dump the crosscheck as an expensive lawsuit magnet. But they've just moved on to other games. And, of course, dead rattlesnakes bite. There's still people on these cross-check lists. I'm telling everyone, if your name's Jose Garcia, James Brown, names of color, you better check your registration online like right now. Because altogether, are you ready, Lee? Yeah. 16.7 million people have been purged from the voter rolls in the last 2 years of record keeping. That's not from Greg Palast from the Black Helicopters. That's from the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission. It's official. Almost 17 million people wiped out. That could be you. Check your registration.
And you also have some breaking news about Georgia as well, right?
Oh, yeah. So we got rid of cross-check in Georgia, but then Brian Kemp, who was Secretary of State and now governor, the guy who supposedly beat Stacey Abrams, he did it by removing voters from the voter rolls while he was in charge of the voter rolls. And so we just checked. The ACLU just issued the report of the Palast Investigative Fund. We found 198,000 voters removed illegally from the voter rolls. By the way, it included such, obviously ne'er-do-wells voting illegally. I was there in Atlanta when Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin tried to vote for her 50th year at the same schoolhouse, and they threw her 92-year-old behind out of the polling station, saying, "You're not registered here anymore," because they said she had moved. So I went to the house that she supposedly moved from, and there were pictures of her with Martin Luther King having dinner at her house from 50 years ago. But they got rid of her. So if they can get rid of her, they get rid of anyone. And by the way, the Georgia system has been rolled out across the country. We're now investigating this system of removing voters claiming that they've moved when they haven't. And again, playing games, if you have a common name and of course, the history of slavery, the history of the conquest, names like Jackson, Brown, Garcia, Chung, Kim, you're in trouble. They're hunting for you. They're coming up with ways to remove you from the voter rolls.
Yeah, I remember in your book you said 1 out of every 12 voters have been purged just by those ridiculous residency claims, which most of them are not true. This person's moved out of the state or whatever, and most of the time it's horseshit. In this election, mailing in your vote has now been like intentionally politicized. Trump wants to stop all mail-in voting. He's pulling up mailboxes, et cetera, because in the general election, the more people who vote, it generally helps the Democrats. However, the Democrats are equally responsible for gutting the postal system with their bill in 2006, but that's a separate story. So now we're in a situation where Trump says mail-in voting. Trump says mail-in voting doesn't work. Democrats say it works just great. And then there's the reality that you talk about in the book. 22% of mail-in votes are generally thrown out. Is that right?
22%, that's 1 in 5 ballots, according to MIT and Caltech, don't get counted. If you mailing in your vote, if you go postal, you're playing Russian roulette with your ballot. Now, we may have to, because otherwise we play Russian roulette with a virus, right? So we have to mail in our ballots if we're stuck. But here's the problem. 1 in 10 ballots never gets to the voter. You know, you ask for that mail-in ballot. That doesn't mean you're going to get it. And it has nothing to do with the post office. It's those Republican voting officials, mostly Republicans, who slow walk the ballot out to you. 1 in 10 voters don't get them. You saw all those lines in Georgia back in June. What do you think? Black people love to stand in line for 4 hours in the humid Georgia rain to vote? No. We talked to them, and they said overwhelmingly, I didn't get the ballot I asked for, so they were stuck standing in those lines. The other thing is 1 in 8 ballots gets challenged, and here's what I'm worried about, Lee. People have to fill out their ballots correctly. You know that 141,000 ballots in 16 were thrown out because someone challenged the signature on the mail-in ballot. 141,000 ballots. Now, were there 141,000 forgers running around the U.S. voting several times? No, they didn't arrest anyone, but this is what you're going to have. You're going to have these boogaloo schmucks in Hawaiian shirts who are going to be in the polling stations. By the way, they're not there to intimidate people. No one's intimidated by these clowns. But they're going to be there to challenge your signature. 100,000 people lost their vote because of postage due. Hundreds of people lost their vote in just one New York primary when the Democrats challenged every ballot that had Scotch tape sealing the mail-in envelope. If you put tape on your envelope, if the Democrats don't challenge you, the Republicans will. And this time, and again, now ready for this, 3.3 million mail-in ballots were not counted in 16. We didn't talk about that. Well, when we go 10 times that many mail-in ballots, I actually figure about 20 million ballots could be thrown out. Remember, Donald Trump won by 70,000 votes in 3 states. So look out with your mail-in ballot. Make sure you do. And if you can go in and vote early, there's no one there midweek in those early voting stations. Try that one. And don't use the post office. Don't go postal. When you're ready to send in your ballot, walk it in or have someone walk it into your county clerk or the postal station. But, you know, handing it to the post office, you'll love this one. In the June primary, the Democrats challenged every vote that didn't have a postmark. Now, the state had sent out ballots to everyone. It's postage paid, a courtesy of the state of New York. Very nice. Post office does not cancel and put a postmark on prepaid envelopes. So you had thousands of New York voters who lost their vote because the Democratic Party said, oh, there's no postmark on these ballots. Well, of course not. They don't postmark pre-stamped ballots.
This is all.
And wait till the Republicans start doing it.
This is also insane because right now you turn on any of the cable news channels and you have Democrats saying mail-in voting is the way to go, and meanwhile they're not talking about these facts that you're talking about. They're not talking about how many get thrown out or how ridiculous this system is. And I guess it's just because they want to pretend that during the primaries all of these things don't matter or something. So they can keep rigging their own primary. It's mind-boggling that this information isn't out there. It amazes me you're not on every channel, even being held up by some of our establishment politicians as, hey, everybody, look how rigged our voting system is. They're scared of you, I guess, Greg, huh?
Well, you know, as Hillary Clinton said 4 years ago, no one's ever challenged the presidential vote. Well, I guess she was in a coma when Al Gore went to the Supreme Court. But other than that, it's very hard to make the case to, tell people, look, American democracy isn't what they told you in the 6th grade in the textbooks. We don't count all the votes. In fact, if you look in my book, and again, this is from the government figures, this is not Greg Palast coming up with this stuff. 1.9 million ballots that were cast in precinct were challenged too, not counted. We don't talk about the uncount in America. Plus 1.8 million people were blocked from voting illegally. Their registrations were just removed because someone said, oh, Jose Garcia, oh, you voted in New Mexico 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So again, this is the games. So look, we're stuck telling people the truth. But the main thing is I'm trying to protect you. When I write a book called How Trump Stole 2020, it's not a prediction, guys. It's a warning. They stole it by changing the rules, removing people from the voter rolls, threatening the mail-in vote. But you can unsteal it. You can protect your vote, but it's not as easy, Lee, as pick and lick. You pick a presidential candidate, you lick a stamp, and you mail it in, and it gets counted. No. That's only in 1940s movies about American democracy. That's not how it works. Your ballot goes in, and some dweeb is looking at you. Remember, it's not a secret ballot anymore. They're looking at it. For example, my mother and my sister lost their ballots. Their mail-in ballots were not counted because they didn't properly fill in a bubble. You have to fill in the bubble, but if you put an X or a smiley face or a check mark, they're not going to count it. They're going to throw it out. Someone's going to challenge that ballot. This is a big problem, and you're going to have to protect your ballot. That's what you got to do.
It's amazing how many other countries seem to have figured this out much better than us. But we just, it just seems to be an accident that we can't seem to actually have legit elections. Nationwide, we're seeing a rise of these vigilantes, Trump supporters attacking people, federal police goon squads, black bagging people. Do you believe there's a connection between that and what's going to happen with the election?
Yeah, it's called practicing. It's called rehearsal, Lee. Here's what's going to happen, and I'm sorry to have to tell you this story. Now my crystal ball is going to speak, and you won't like it. The election's not going to be determined on November 3rd. It's 4th, 5th, 6th, 12th, 13th, 14th, when the Boogaloo Boys and the Proud Boys start stopping the count, burning post offices because Roger Stone has told them that 100,000 ballots have been mailed in from Venezuela. Remember, Roger Stone was given a get-out-of-jail-free card. I think the Trump campaign remembered the nice job he did in 2000 when he led what was called the Gucci riot, where you had consultants at $1,200 an hour literally smashing up the Miami-Dade clerk's office where they're trying to count the ballots. If you remember, there were thousands of ballots that weren't counted because of so-called hanging chads. It's just pieces of paper stuck to the back of a ballot which stopped the machine from reading it. So they're reading it by eyeball, which is very easy to do, unless, of course, someone is smashing the glass, banging on the door, and threatening to kill you. So they shut down the vote. And then the Republican Secretary of State, a lady named Catherine Harris, she's a full-time cadaver, and she was a part-time also as the chairwoman of the Bush campaign for election. And so she cut off the vote, resulting in George W. Bush winning the presidency of the United States by just 537 ballots in Florida because they stopped the count with this riot. That's practice. So they're going to have black SUVs on the street. You won't know whether it's Proud Boys or federal agents. There's going to be a reaction. And this time it won't be Gucci loafers shutting down these voting offices. It'll be these weirdos in the with the Hawaiian shirts who are going to be using crowbars, Molotov cocktails, and obviously we now know they use guns too. So this is going to be done to try to basically get states not to certify their vote counts. They say, oh, there's all this fraud, there's all this mayhem, votes are stuck in the post office. It's a total cluster F, right? Yeah. And therefore, they're not going to certify the elections in, say, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, where you have Republican legislatures. Ready? No one gets 270 votes in the Electoral College because states haven't certified the final results. And then it goes under Article 12, or I should say Amendment 12 of the Constitution, to the House of Representatives. No, Pelosi doesn't pick your president. Each state gets one single vote. And in one single vote, there are, 26 Republican majority delegations in the House. Donald Trump is reelected under Article 12. Congratulations, Donald. By riot.
So I was saying this a few weeks ago, that he's just hoping to create enough chaos on the day of that he can run around and saying the vote's not legit. And it's very similar to what the Democrats did in their Iowa caucus, putting out the shadow app that somehow just created mass chaos so they could deny Bernie Sanders a victory. But that chaos is all they need. And Trump views that chaos as what he needs. And I think that's also why he's prepping for some kind of action. You mentioned Venezuela. He's prepping for some kind of military action against Venezuela so that he can say, oh, they manipulated your vote. And, of course, no one on either side, either party, is standing up against the pro-war propaganda against Venezuela. Greg, obviously we could talk about this for an hour. I'm so sorry to run out of time. But the book is How Trump Stole 2020. I recommend everybody get it and learn how to protect their vote. Thank you so much, Greg.
You're the best, Lee.
Oh, shit. I'm missing a shoe. I had two shoes. Anyway, let me get to the point. There's a brand... Thanks. All of our content, Redacted Tonight's content, is now in a brand new free app called Portable TV. Okay, you can get every episode, no commercials, all at Portable TV. You can grab it for free, and then I can follow you everywhere you go. I mean, I have been anyway, but this will be less awkward. So go get it. All right, go ahead. Take both shoes this time.